Hello, my name is Baruch, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm here with you on my continuing series of working the 12 steps, going through the Old Testament, one step at a time, one book at a time, and we've reached a milestone. We're doing the 12th step in the book of Genesis. This is the conclusion of the book of Genesis in this series, so stay tuned because next week we're going to start step 1 with Exodus, and we're going to keep going until we're all the way through Deuteronomy. So today we're going to talk about Genesis 48:5, which is a verse that will need a little bit of explanation. So in this verse, the person who is talking is Jacob, the patriarch Jacob, and he is talking to his son Joseph. Jacob is on his deathbed, and in front of him are Ephraim and Manasseh, who are Joseph's two sons. So there's four people in the scene, as you might say. I used to work in television. It's a scene with four people. Jacob is looking at these two boys, and he says to Joseph, his son, he says, quote, "And now thy two sons, who were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came unto thee in Egypt, are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh, even as Reuben and Simeon shall be mine." So what he's saying to Joseph, there's a lot going on here. He's basically adopting Joseph's two sons. He's basically adopting his two grandsons as his own sons when it comes to inheritance. And Jacob, when it comes to inheritance, it's not about money. It's not like one's getting the car and one's getting the house. They're getting to be Jacob's sons, which means that they will inherit the complete mantle of being part of the tribes of Israel. Ephraim and Manasseh are now each the head of their own tribes, which is something that only Jacob's sons were eligible to do. So it's kind of a strange situation because Joseph was supposed to be the head of his own tribe, but we don't have a tribe of Joseph. The 12 tribes of Israel in the Bible do not include a tribe of Joseph. Instead, they include a tribe of Ephraim and a tribe of Manasseh. So what's happening is that Jacob is saying, I'm basically adopting your two sons as if they're my own sons now, and each will get their own tribe. That is their inheritance for all time. They will be tribal leaders of Israel. And Joseph is not going to have his own tribe. So, how's Joseph going to react to this? Okay, that's the question that we should ask ourselves when it comes to recovery, because I think this may be a situation that we can relate to in a lot of ways. And to me, it relates to the 12th step. The 12th step, which is, again, one of these double steps. There's two things going on here. It's actually three things. Having had a spiritual awakening, that's one thing. As a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. That's the second step in here. And practice these principles in all our affairs. That's the 12th step. It's asking you to do two things based on the assumption that you've done a third. But they're all really the same thing, which is that you can't, well, let me put it this way. You shouldn't try to carry this message to alcoholics if you can't practice these principles in all your affairs. You know, if you're just a horrible dry drunk and a miserable human being, you're not a good advertisement for the program. Try not to carry the message. If you're going to carry the message, you do it by the way you act with people. That's what the message really should be about. But it's not easy, because this moment in the Bible is one that could potentially create resentment. If you think about it, if you're Joseph, you know, I'm just going to put this out there. This is not how Joseph reacted. The truth is we don't know exactly how Joseph reacted. There's some interpretations, but there's nothing in the biblical text that has any reaction from Joseph to this in a negative way. But Joseph might have been thinking, hey, wait a minute, Dad, I worked hard, I toiled, I tried to make the family name look good, I saved all the people in Egypt from starvation, and I don't even get my own tribe. You'd be like, hey, what's going on here? You're going to give this to my sons? Why? Maybe we can relate. Did you ever have a resentment about something you think you deserved but didn't get? This is very common in alcoholism and addiction. Okay, it's also true in recovery. Sometimes even when you're in recovery, you can have resentments about, something you thought you were supposed to get but didn't get. So the question is, are you going to practice these principles? Are you going to turn things over? Are you going to work the 10th step? Are you going to admit when you were wrong? Are you going to search your behavior for resentments and defects of character? Because if you do, maybe you will come to a realization that this thing that you didn't get, maybe you weren't supposed to get it. That's one thing. Or it was for the best. And this is something that comes out in the story of Joseph and his two sons, because what's really happening here is that Joseph is not getting an inheritance, he's getting a double inheritance. And this actually works with biblical law. He's the oldest child of Jacob and Rachel. He's the elder child, and as the elder child, according to biblical law, he is entitled to a double portion of inheritance. So this is what Jacob is actually doing. He's saying, Joseph, you're my eldest through this marriage. I mean, Jacob had 4 wives, so he had an eldest with each of his wives. But in his marriage to Rachel, who was his original intended bride, according to the Bible, you're my eldest, you get a double portion. Therefore, you get 2 tribes for your name. And this is something, as a parent, maybe we can relate. You want something good for your children. Maybe you want a double portion for your children. But it's just about how you look at it. Can you see the positive in something that may look bad? And that's something that I would suggest that we look at for the 12th step, because the 12th step is challenging. Practicing these principles in all your affairs is not easy. I mean, some people have really great recovery and it comes kind of naturally to them, but even the best of us struggle with this sometimes. We get attacked by resentments, like, hey, why didn't we get this? Why didn't this happen to me? This is the challenge of the 12th step. But again, going back to the 12th step, if you've had a spiritual awakening, let's go back to the step. If you've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, that's the key to it. Then you will not have the resentment, or as much of the resentment. You'll be able to practice these principles in your affairs, and you'll be able to carry the message to alcoholics by acting like a sober person. That is really useful for people, because in fact, if you talk to people who come into the program, they may say, hey, I met somebody who was sober, and I was really amazed at the way they handled themselves, the way they handled life. And I thought, I want to be that way, right? As we say in the meetings, if you want what we have, right? What do we have in recovery? We have the ability to practice these principles in all our affairs. And that means handling resentments and dealing with them, turning them over, trying to see perhaps the hidden positive side of what's going on, as we have in the Joseph example. And there's a lot to learn there. And if you like what you heard here, I invite you to check out the Old Testament 12-step workbook, which has a lot of the same lessons in it and work and exercises. It's available at the link below. I have to put in my little plug here. Or come visit us at oldtestamentsobriety.com. And thank you for listening today.